Welcome to the ED Post Sports Chat. I'm Rubenstein here again with Justin Jackson and the WVU men's basketball team on a 3-game winning streak. Just beat Oklahoma. First time they've beaten a top 25 team in 2 years, and the whole conversation with this team has drastically changed since that Tuesday night in Baylor. Has this team turned the corner? Has it found the thing it was lacking for a season and a half? What's going on here?
I think that's the ultimate question, and you kind of wonder if this is just a run of good luck, or if this is actually putting together a run. I think obviously it's hard to answer that question because you have to factor in what happened before this run happened, and they were obviously on some tough times before they won these last 3 games, but they're obviously playing much better now. So I think if you really want to answer that question, it's going to have to take to see what happens the rest of the season. Can they continue to maintain consistency? Can they continue to beat some top 25 teams? They have some more tougher games coming up on the schedule. They have beginning with Kansas on Saturday, and then obviously Iowa State and Texas, and then there's more games coming up. So it's really kind of tough to answer that question right now.
Sure. I mean, you look at the characteristics of this team, and you wonder if much, if anything's really changed. It's just kind of been they've gone the good side of things. Juwan Staten played unbelievable for 2 games, and the performance he turned in against Kansas State is one that we haven't seen in the Coliseum in quite a while by any individual player. And then for Aaron Harris to do what he did late in the game against Oklahoma, I mean, it seems like WVU's makeup hasn't really changed. They still are the same team that they have been all season. It's just certain things have happened late in games.
They're playing with more confidence, and and they're making plays now that they normally didn't make before when things were going bad. If you go back to the beginning of the season and look at a couple of those losses, the Virginia Tech game, Wisconsin game kind of come to mind. There were opportunities in those games to make plays, to grab a rebound, to come up with a loose ball, and they did make them. Well, in the Oklahoma game, they did make those plays, and then in the Baylor game they made those plays, and in the Kansas State game at the Coliseum they made those plays. Against Oklahoma, I think Juwan Staten coming up with that loose ball after it had been poked away from Gary Brown on the inbounds play. Devin Williams coming up with a big steal, rebound / steal, depending on who you talk to. That was late in the game, and then obviously Aaron making the big 3 to send the game into overtime. Those are plays they just didn't make before, and they are making now. Confidence probably has a lot to do with that. The team is playing with more confidence, but again, it's consistency, and that was something Aaron Harris talked about after the Oklahoma game was maintaining the consistency to be able to do it from here on out against the Kansas and against Iowa State and against Texas, and not just have it end right here.
What about the fact of maybe this team finding its identity, and I mean that in Juwan Staten has become the leader and the focal point, and when things are in tough situations, they're going back to him. They've early in the season that wasn't necessarily always the case, whereas now it seems like they realize that's the guy, that's where everything has to start. Not to say that an Aaron Harrison doesn't still hit threes, but I think you're seeing a difference in those late game situations just with Juwan Staten and his leadership. Would you buy into that? Is that a big part?
I would certainly buy into that. I mean, certainly in late game situations, and and even against Oklahoma, I mean, Aaron is always going to be given credit for hitting that big 3. But if you look at the preceding minutes heading up to that shot, the ball was in Juwan's hands, and it was his decision on either to take it in or to drive it to the basket or to pass it off. And I think WVU is always going to continue to do that. They trust the ball in Juwan's hands. They trust Juwan to make the right plays and to make the right decisions. He rarely turns the ball over. Now he's had a few games where he's had a high number of turnovers, but he rarely turns the ball over on a consistent basis. He makes the right decisions, and I think that is, if that's their identity, if letting Juwan kind of put the ball in his hands and let him drive or pass it off and make the decision, if that's their identity, I mean, it's a pretty good one because, I think Juwan has established himself as one of the best players in the conference, and, who else better to have the ball?
After last season and a half, it's at least exciting for a lot of fans that that the rest of the way there is excitement, there is
Right.
intrigue with what this team's going to do. Expectation-wise, though, some are saying they're back on the bubble of the NCAA tournament,
Yeah.
as crazy as that may have seemed even just 9 days ago.
Right.
But what's realistic expectations? Because you mentioned the tough stretch. You got Kansas, you got Iowa State, and you got Texas.
Right.
Your next three. Is the NCAA tournament a viable option for this team? Is it more the NIT? What are your thoughts there?
You know, I mean, not only Kansas and Iowa State and Texas, but you know, you have to play Kansas a second time, and you
Yeah.
have to play Baylor a second time, and you have to play Iowa State a second time. So, you know, I mean, that's 6 tough games down the stretch, and you know, obviously, you know, there's one more game against TCU, which is a very winnable game, and you know, the Baylor game's at home, and the remaining Baylor games at home, so you probably have a pretty good chance to win that one. So, I mean, if you kind of just try to factor in, you know, where you can win a game, where you might be able to steal a game, what games you're going to be favored in. You know, making the NCAA tournament would be kind of a stretch, I think, at this point. It's a nice story that they're making a run at it now. I mean, considering where they started off the beginning of the year,
Right.
where they were a month ago. I think the NIT is very much a possibility, and you know, and people say, well, that's not a very big deal. But you know, if you just remember what happened last year, I mean, people would have killed to have been in the
Sure.
NIT. You know, and so to have this team a year later, having gone through what it did last year, to be in the postseason, to be in the NIT, I think that would be a pretty good stretch for this team, a pretty good accomplishment for this team, and I think the NIT is reachable. I mean, you still have to win some. You know, you have to win some games. You know, at least get 16, 17 wins. You have to finish above 500 to be eligible for the NIT, and then still it's a selection process. The NIT has to select you to play in the tournament. So, you know, getting to 16, 17, you know, you need 3 more, and so you know, you kind of look over the schedule, and you know, you can kind of pick and choose where do you get those 3 or 4, and then yeah, I mean, I think the NIT is very possible.
Well, at least the rest of the way should be fun, and after last season, WVU fans are happy about that one. But appreciate your time once again, and have a safe trip to Lawrence, Kansas, and please continue to check thedpost.com for the latest on the Mountaineers. Thanks for watching.